What's up, fam? It's me, and I'm back with another episode of Undiluted TV. And yeah, it's another one of those late night, early morning sessions. This is my grandbaby weekend, so I had to wait until she got good and sleep so I can come in here and we can get it in because we're gonna get it in on this episode. We're gonna get it in, as I'm sure you can see from the title. I intend to get it in. And I mean I intend to go hard. So for anybody who let me go ahead on and put the disclaimer out there. For anybody who gonna call themselves trying to be offended or whatever the case may be, you can just go straight to hell. Because what these folks got going on and what these folks are planning and the agenda these folks are pushing and all of this stuff with children, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. Now, what grown folks decide that they want to do, how grown folks decide they want to live their lives, whoever grown folks decided they want to sleep with, whatever the hell they want to call themselves identifying as, or whatever the case may be, that's their business if they're grown. But all this stuff that's going on with children and all of this putting this in front of little one and two and three and four and five and 6 and 7 year old children that have no business even being confronted with anything about sex and gender. This shit has got to stop. It has got to stop. And it's our responsibility as the adults with common sense, as the parents, as the teachers and the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts and the brothers and the sisters, as the adults. It's our responsibility because the children can only accept what's put in front of them. They don't have a choice. We have to make that choice for them. And it's time for us to stand up, especially to stand up to the LGBTQ community. Because they bullying everybody with all that homophobic mess and transphobic mess and all of this kind of mess and spewing out all that hatred and bullying everybody. And they got folks, with all this politically correct mess, and you can't say this and you can't say that, and all of this kind of stuff, and got folks apologizing to them left and right and all this. And this is the kind of mess this is the kind of agenda that they pushing. This is the kind of mess that they got going on. We have bowed down and we have cowered before them long enough. It's time for us to stand up and fight back. The children are at stake. If we wouldn't do it for ourselves, well, it's time for us to stand up and do it for the children because the children are at stake. Their lives, their fragile mentality, their psychology, all of that is at stake. So, as you can tell, we're going to get it in tonight. We're going to get it in. We're going to talk about 3 different stories and you will see, by the time we finish with this video, you will see how these 3 stories link together and how these 3 stories are a part of the larger agenda. So let's start with the first most obvious one. I hope all of y'all, had a good night. I hope all of y'all, are branching out on a prosperous, happy weekend. But this mess here, you know what I'm saying? And all this they got going on with Kobe and all of this they got going on talking about impeaching Donald Trump and all of this bullshit they got going on talking about a coronavirus and all of that kind of stuff. All of that stuff is being used as a distraction, and all of this stuff, the real agenda. All of this stuff is supposed to go under the radar. It's supposed to go undetected. Because there's so much other stuff going on to distract us and to deflect from what's really going on. The aim, the target has always been the children. It has always been the children. No society is any better than the children that it raises. No group of people is any better than the children that they produce. Our children are our greatest resource. And our children are under full attack. Full attack. And they can't fight back. They don't have the voice. They don't have the power. They don't have the resources. They don't have the control. They don't have the anything to fight back. So if we raise up another generation of completely screwed up kids, it won't be their fault. It'll be our fault. Because we didn't speak out, we didn't stand up, we didn't fight back. It's 3:28 a.m. over here on the East Coast. But there was no way that I could lay my head down to go to sleep tonight with this on my heart and this on my mind. So let's get into it. This first article is coming from, it's called LifeSite. And of course it's a online publication. And again, it's called LifeSite, and it's Thursday, January 30th, 2020, 11:52 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. News, breaking, cross-dressing LGBT activists to appear on Sesame Street. Now, I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen it. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard about the fact that Billy Porter, with all of this flamboyant, stupid-looking, clownish dress mess, that tuxedo mess that he wore to the Oscars. I think it was either last year or year before last, and all that. Well, he's going to appear on Sesame Street in that mess. A man with a full face of hair and all of this gonna appear on Sesame Street decked out in a woman's dress. And this is gonna be seen by thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of impressionable young children. Because Sesame Street caters to what? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Sesame Street caters to children that you know, from my experience, and when I was watching Sesame Street, and when my children were watching Sesame Street, from my experience, Sesame Street caters to kids that are below the second grade, second, third grade, 7, 8 years old. But let me read this article. The article is by Calvin Freiberger. The LGBT activists' fierce vibes are coming to the beloved children's show, according to Sesame Street's official Facebook page. And they proud of this. They posting this all on Facebook and all on Twitter and all of this kind of stuff. And this is not the first time. I think back in 2017, they did some kind of ad or some kind of promo or something with the gay flag colors and everything, talking about how they are accepting of all different kinds of families and all of this kind of bullshit. But what does that have to do with children? What does that have to do with what Sesame Street is supposed to be there for? Sesame Street is supposed to be there to help with a child's education, their ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. Not to get into sexual orientation and gender. Not to get into any questions about sex and gender and all of this kind of stuff. I'm hot. Y'all just gonna have to bear with me tonight. Because I might veer off into a tangent at any moment, because this shit here is just not making any sense. This is not going too far. This is gone too far. It's already past too far. You got this man talking about showing up on Sesame Street dressed like a fucking clown in front of all of these babies. You understand what I'm saying? You already got them with children's books with all of this transgender and drag queens and all of this kind of stuff in little children's books, like Dr. Seuss books. You already got Netflix and Nickelodeon and all of this with transgender drag queen superheroes and cartoons and all of that kind of shit. You already got this shit where they forcing, it's mandatory in some states that all of this homosexuality and LGBT and shit like that be talking about. It's the curriculum and LGBTQ history and all of this kind of mess. I mean, it's just it's too much. It's too much. I'm looking up something right quick for y'all. Yeah, this is just this is too much. This is too much. I just got I can't. I just oh Lord Jesus. I just want to read this to y'all right quick. I was looking this up and I just want to read this to y'all right quick. New study reveals shocking rates of attempted suicide among trans adolescents. Adolescents now. We're talking about below the age of 18. Adolescents? Yeah, we're talking about below the age of 18. By this article is in Human Rights Campaign and is by Rokia Hassanin, September 2018. Harrowing statistics from a study recently published by the American Academy of Pediatrics revealed alarming levels of attempted suicide among transgender youth, with the highest rates among transgender boys and non-binary youth. The findings emphasize the urgency of building welcoming and safe communities for LGBTQ young people, particularly for transgender youth. More than half of transgender male teens who participated in the survey reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, while 29.9% of transgender female teens said they attempted suicide. Among non-binary youth, 41.8% of respondents stated that they had attempted suicide at some point in their lives. Those are the statistics. More than half transgender boys, 29.9% transgender girls, and 41.8% non-binary youth have attempted suicide. And they want to try to say it's because of society, or because society is not welcoming and not accepting enough and all that. How much more accepting do we need to be? How much more accepting does society need to be? When you got laws protecting these people, you got all kind of special rights and special privileges. The lifestyle is being forced on everybody. How much more accepting do we have to be? No, these children are not committing suicide because people are not just accepting it. These children are committing suicide because they're confused. This kind of stuff causes all kinds of sexual confusion, especially in young children when they see these images on TV, when they see these images in real life. When they see a mommy looking like a man and daddy looking like a girl, and they see a man coming in dressed up like a woman, it's confused. It's sexually confused. It's the sexual confusion. It's the mental and psychological confusion. Your body is telling you one thing, but mentally and emotionally, you're being told something else. The images in society and what you're hearing and what you're seeing on TV and what you're hearing in music and all of this kind of stuff is telling you something else. So your mind and your body are constantly clashing with each other. And you're confused. You feel hopeless. Because deep down inside, you know, wait a minute, something is not right with this. Something is not right with this. Why am I constantly at war with my own body? Why is my mind and body constantly at war with each other? And it brings about all of that depression, suicidal thoughts, all those things that lead to suicide and suicide attempts. But this article will be linked in the description box, as you know, so that you can see the statistics for yourself. Because we got a generation of kids that are confused. And then on top of that, you know, with all this estrogen and everything and all this added estrogen that's being put in the food and all of this kind of stuff. So all these chemical unbalances. And why? Why are the children having to suffer like this? Because certain people want to push an agenda. Okay, let me get back to the story about Billy Porter. January 30th, 2020. LifeSite News. Bert and Ernie may not be a same-sex couple, but the long-running children's franchise Sesame Street is about to get an infusion of LGBT vibes with an upcoming guest appearance by actor and LGBT activist Billy Porter. Porter, best known as Pray Tell in the FX's LGBT ballroom drama Pose, and for wearing extravagant dresses, will appear during the 51st season of the beloved children's show, according to Sesame Street's official Facebook page. Billy Porter bringing those fierce vibes to Sesame Street, the Post declares, accompanied by photos of Porter on the classic set wearing a tuxedo gown. And you'll see the pictures in the video. Comments on the post were largely positive, though some readers expressed concern. That is pushing too much at little children. It makes no sense. Kids have too much on their little plates as it is, one said. Why add more? Sesame Street is for children, and diversity should be taught at a child-appropriate level. A man in a dress is not child-appropriate. In fact, it can be confusing. It is confusing, another argued. While striving to teach to be yourself, you're teaching boys who are masculine that it's not okay for them to be masculine. So it's not okay for them to be themselves. Boys who are being masculine. Boys who want to play with trucks and cars. Boys who want to rough it up and who want to play rough and all of this kind of stuff. Just boys being boys. Seeing a man walking around all feminized and all of that and all soft in a dress makes that boy feel like, okay, well, I can't be myself. What am I supposed to do now? Am I supposed to go get a dress? Am I supposed to go put on a dress? Am I supposed to walk around and act like a girl now? But yet they claim that that's all they want, is just to be accepted as for who they are. But yet they're sending a message to children that masculinity is toxic, and being a boy and being a strong boy and wanting to play ball and wanting to, rough house and do all the things that boys do, that's toxic. As though our children are not confused enough. What is your agenda? Another asked. Unbelievable. So disappointing. This isn't the first time Sesame Street has promoted LGBT themes. In 2017, it tweeted a rainbow of multicolored Muppets for Pride Month with the declaration Sesame Street is proud to support families of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Later that year, its song, Anyone Can Play, purported to smash gender norms for children's toys and costumes, including the lyrics, some boys like to play with dolls, while the male character Grover is seen in a purple dress. So see, we should have said something about it then. There should have been outrage about it then. And maybe it would not have come to this. There should have been outrage about it in 2017. Because this is not Sesame Street's place. It's not Sesame Street's place to decide what these children need to see and what they need to hear as far as sexuality is concerned. And as far as gender is concerned, it's not Sesame Street's place to have that conversation, to introduce that into any child's life. That's for parents and guardians. Last year, Porter prefaced President Donald Trump's annual State of the Union address with his own LGBT State of the Union, during which he claimed our rights are under threat and the sanctity of identities is in peril. Now, how are their rights under threat? What rights are they supposed to have so much more than any other American? What rights are they? Why are they supposed to have special rights and special privileges? Why are they supposed to have, and what rights are threatened? They completely hijacked the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They have completely hijacked that. So it's illegal in as far as I know, in most of, if not all of, the 50 states in the United States, it's illegal to discriminate against anybody because of their sex or because of their gender. So what more rights do they need? Why do they need more rights than everybody else? Why do you need a right to try to be something that you're not? Why do you need a special protection or a special privilege granted to you by the government of a country? Why do you need that to try to be something that you're not? And how do your rights give you the right to push your lifestyle, your preferences, your choices, your decision on innocent children? Okay, that's it about there's not much about that. It's just everybody wants everybody to know that they're planning to air him on Sesame Street. So that's it about that. But let's break Billy Porter down. Billy Porter is nothing but a clown. That's all he is. He's just a clown for white supremacy. Willing to he calls himself married to some white guy. And to get this recognition because he's a mediocre actor at best. And they giving him all of these awards and they giving him all of these nominations and all of this kind of stuff. Why? Because he's a clown. Look at how he dresses on the red carpet. Do you see any white actors dressing like that? Even if they are professed gay, do you see anybody else doing that? Do you see any white actors doing that? Do you see any white actors coming out on the red carpet in all of these elaborate clownish looking outfits and dresses and all of this kind of stuff? Tell me one white male actor that you see that has come out as gay, that has come out as homosexual, that has come out as LGBTQ. Tell me one of them that you see that they parade around like they do Billy Porter. He's the court jester. He's the clown that they use to push this agenda on everybody. He's the puppet that's willing to go out and be the face of white supremacy as far as the effemination of black men, the emasculation of black men. Because if you can get them young, if you can break them while they're young, you ain't got to wait until they get in their teens or until they get in their 20s or their 30s to try to break them, to try to buck break them. If you can break them when they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and have them confused. And having them think that they supposed to be soft and they supposed to be feminine like girls and they supposed to be playing with dolls and they supposed to be going around in dresses like Charlize Theron with that little boy, and she has basically tried to turn him into a little girl. She has tried to turn him into a little girl. That's child abuse. And she started that with that child when he was just 3 years old, before he was old enough to even know whether he was a boy or a girl, to even care about whether he was a boy or a girl. I think he like what, 5, 6, 7 years old now, and now he's just a full-fledged girl. So what's she gonna do to the other one? The little girl. So what, by the time she get 3 or 4 years old, what, she gonna have her walking around dressing like a boy and claiming that she's a boy? I mean, this stuff is demonic. This stuff is not natural. And it's all geared towards children. Why would Billy Porter even want to consider Sesame Street? What would make a full-grown, gray-ass, old-ass man decide that he wants to make this kind of appearance on Sesame Street? If it's not pushing some kind of agenda, if there's not something malevolent and something evil and something twisted behind it. What would make a full-grown person want to do this with children? You understand what I'm saying? The children are not the ones that you say that your rights and your right to your identity and all of that is being threatened. Well, the children aren't the ones that's threatening it. So why are you presenting this mess to children? Why are you presenting this mess to children? They don't legislate. The children are not lawmakers. The children pose no threat to you. So why do you feel like it's necessary for you to take your activism to Sesame Street, to a children's platform, if there's nothing sinister behind it? And as long as they keep offering him this recognition, as long as they keep allowing him to, to be as flamboyant as he wants to be and as out there as he wants to be and all of that, as long as they keep allowing him to do that and he keeps getting rewarded for doing it, he'll keep doing it until somebody shuts him down. It's time for him to be shut down. Now, if he want to walk around in front of them grown folks and in front of them white folks and be their clown, and be they court jester, be they eunuch. You know what a eunuch is? A eunuch is the ones that they used to take and they would castrate them so that they could never have children. And then they would dress them up in all the finery. And a lot of the eunuchs of old, in the olden times, were black. But if that's the way he wants to live his life, that's fine for him to do that with adults. But don't take that mess before children. You make it clear that there's an agenda when you take that mess before children. I mean, first we had a drag queen story time, and look how that turned out. Come to find out, 2 or 3 of the so-called drag queens that was reading to these children were actually convicted sex offenders. Now you understand why all of those sex rings, all of those pedophile sex rings in Hollywood and in high places, now you understand why those men are not being challenged. Now you understand why nobody of importance is speaking out against that. Now you understand the reason why the documentary that Corey Feldman did, naming all of these folks and all of these folks that are part of these pedophile rings. Now you understand why that documentary didn't do any good and why they buried it. It's because America is a part of this. There are people in very, very high places that are pushing this agenda. That this agenda comes down from very high places. That's why the Harvey Weinsteins and the Brian Spate and the Brian what is that man's name? Brian Singers and the Kevin Spaceys and the Woody Allens are not being talked about. They're not being touched. Jeffrey Epstein should have been up under the prison a long time ago. And they gave him a sweetheart deal that first time around. This agenda is coming from very high up. And it's being pushed and pushed and pushed. And they are using Billy Porter, a sold out, sick, twisted, demented, evil black man, to be the face of it. He is becoming the face of this agenda. Because like I said, you don't see no other you don't see no white man doing this. You don't see no white actor out doing this, dressing up in like a woman and being all flamboyant and everything like a woman. You don't see that. You don't see them parading any white male actor around like that. Why? 1, because none of them would be willing to do it. 2, they don't want anybody white. They want somebody black. Why? Because now, since he's black, black has become the face of sexual deviancy. This black man is who everybody's going to hate. Because he's the one that they're pushing in everybody's face. But understand, this is not Billy Porter's agenda. This is just an agenda that he's being used to push. It's not his agenda. If it wasn't him, it'd be somebody else. So don't let Billy Porter being the one that they use because he likes the attention. He's an attention whore. He loves the attention. He loves feeling like he's being accepted. He loves feeling like he's being praised. And because of that, he's very, very easy to use. He's very easy to manipulate. But don't think for 1 minute that because he's the face of it, that it's his agenda. But he needs to be removed. Billy Porter needs to be removed. If he's going to be that easy to be used, if he's going to allow himself to be used that easy, if it was that easy for him to sell his soul, to try to attract and indoctrinate and buck break and screw up children before they're old enough to make any kind of decision whatsoever about their lives, then he needs to be removed. So yes, we need to boycott Sesame Street. We need to boycott PBS because most Sesame Street airs on PBS. We need to talk about this. This is what we need to be talking about. We don't need to be talking about what's going on with Donald Trump. We don't need to be talking about what's going on in China. We've talked enough about Kobe Bryant. This is what we need to be talking about. This is what we need to be concentrating on. This is what we need to be fighting. And we need to be fighting it with everything that we got. Now, also within this article about Billy Porter is a petition. And it says, petition, parents demand Sesame Street remove show with drag queen. Sign the petition here. And let me just give you a little rundown of what they say in the petition. Petition. Parents demand Sesame Street drop show with drag queen. Talking about Billy Porter. Parents around the country are outraged by Sesame Street's decision to push drag queens on children. Now, we done already had drag queen story time. And we see how that turned out. Like I said, there were 2 or 3 of those drag queens that they later found out were actually convicted sex offenders, registered sex offenders, convicted of molesting children. The long-running children's program is one of the latest mainstream institutions to try to sexualize children using drag queens, and parents are fed up. The children's program just announced that LGBT drag queen activist Billy Porter is to feature on an episode this year wearing a gender-bending tuxedo gown. We are demanding the producers of Sesame Street stop this attack on children and their innocence, said Gilberto Garcia Jones, president of the Personhood Alliance. Let children be children and stop trying to force this corrupting and dangerous influence on the youth of America. This urgent petition, sponsored by LifeSite and the Personhood Alliance, calls on HBO and AT&T, the parent company of HBO, to pull this episode from the series lineup. Oh, why am I not surprised that it's HBO and AT&T? Why does that not surprise me? Why am I not surprised that HBO and AT&T are behind this? The same HBO that was willing to run that whole lie about Michael Jackson in the Leaving Neverland documentary. That same HBO. The same AT&T that sponsored those so-called Revolt TV summits that were nothing but a mess. That were nothing but a bunch of black folks going up there performing. Nobody coming with a black agenda. Nobody really talking any real black politics. Just a bunch of black folks coming together to entertain. So why am I not surprised that HBO and AT&T are behind this? The promotion of drag queens, seen at this year's Super Bowl and also at libraries around the country, is a coordinated effort by LGBT activists to normalize their morally and scientifically dangerous ideology with the youth. Transgenderism is not about love. It is a disorder, gender dysphoria, which has absolutely no place on a children's program. It's a mental disorder. That's what the medical communities calls it. A mental disorder, gender dysphoria. So why would a mental disorder be promoted on a children's program for children who aren't even old enough to understand what a disorder is? Less more gender dysphoria. By contributing to this social contagion, Sesame Street is forcing children to deal with adult concepts and notions about sexuality which are beyond their level of maturity and which can leave psychological scars. Many jurisdictions define this kind of behavior as abuse, and rightly so. 41.8% of gender confused youth claim to have attempted suicide. That is tragic. Why would Sesame Street want to contribute to this epidemic? Now that's the information that they have on the petition, and they were asking for 25,000. Well, they had reached one goal. Now they've gone up from that one goal to 25,000, and they already have 22,696 signatures as of me looking at it right now. And of course, the link to sign this petition will be in the description box if you decide that you want to sign it. And I would hope that anybody who sees this would want to sign it. I would hope you wouldn't have any problem signing this, because this is just taking things entirely too far. This is not about activism. This is not about you being a LGBT activist or a gay rights activist or whatever. That's not what this is about. This has gone beyond that. The gay rights movement has been hijacked by these folks who have for centuries wanted to get at your children. That's the reason why in ancient times, in ancient Greece, in ancient Rome, pederasty, which is the love of children, especially the love of men towards boys, it was legal. It was fine. All throughout Europe, it was the norm. It was the thing. Kings and nobility and royalty and all of that, they had their husbands and their wives and all that kind of stuff, and they had their little stash of boys and sometimes little girls. So this is not something new. This has been going on for centuries. Grown folks want to be able to abuse children, wanting to be able to have sexual relationships with children at will. But as the moral conscience of the world started to grow, and as society started to grow and become more civilized, then pederasty, pedophilia, the love of having these kind of relationships with children became illegal. And for all these centuries, they've been doing everything they can. It's been their plan to try to get it legal again. And they're getting real, real close to that. Why? Because we have not done anything. Because we're not doing anything. And while I'm sitting here, the signatures is going up. Now it's 22,708. It was 22,696 a few minutes ago. Now it's 22,708. So yes, the link will definitely be in the description box, and you definitely need to sign this thing. And you need to share it with as many people as you think will sign it, because something needs to be done. Like they say in the petition, why can't you just let kids be kids? Now when they open up their little ABC 1, 2, 3 books and they little Dr. Seuss like books and all of that, they got to be confronted with sexuality. They got to be confronted with questions of gender and transgenderism and all of that. Now on Saturday morning, when they go to look at cartoons or whenever they go to look at cartoons, they gotta deal with it. It's being pushed in their face. Why? To indoctrinate them at a young age, to get them confused and mixed up at a young age. If you break them now, you don't have to break them later on. They also have a petition where you can boycott the Super Bowl for airing ads with drag queens. Now, grown folks watch Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Now, if I don't know about all that, but definitely, this Sesame Street thing, definitely that. But let me leave this and move on because I got two more stories that I want to talk about that tie into this. You understand what I'm saying? That tie into this and that show, how what lengths they're going to push this agenda. And to further prove that children are just not safe. Children are just not safe. There is no safe haven for children anymore. There is no safe haven in the United States for children anymore. So there's no point in our government trying to act like the atrocities and all the crimes and the sex trafficking and the human trafficking and all of this and the child prostitution and all of this kind of stuff that's going on in other countries and all of that. There's no need for the United States and for our government to try to take no moral high ground or to try to act like we're any better, because this place is no safer for children than any other place on this globe. Than any other place on this globe. Okay, the next story I want to go to is a story from News Target. And this story is a couple of months old. And somehow, we get so busy trying to keep up with everything that's going on to sometimes things slip by us. But we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it when we need to get to it. But anyway, this story came out November the 1st, 2019. So like I said, it's a couple of months old. By Ethan Huff. And like I said, it's coming out of News Target. Transgenders are the new untouchables. Court decides child porn is legal for those who are suffering from identity crisis. Okay, now just let me read. A 22-year-old man who thinks he's a woman has been given a free pass after being caught with graphic child pornography on his mobile phone, which a judge decided is not that big of a deal after all, since the man belongs to the LGBTQ. Batia Joseph Button, who was 18 at the time when child rape and other horrific sexual images were discovered on his phone, had previously pled guilty to this crime. He, whatever, was then convicted of illegally possessing child porn and subsequently slated for an appropriate sentence. That is, until Button and her lawyer decided to play the LGBTQP get out of jail free card. Button's lawyer actually tried to argue that his client does not present as a person who is a risk to children, claiming that she was simply acting in the context of low self-esteem and lack of confidence due to teenage sexual adjustment issues, when she P decided to download child porn on his phone. The judge ultimately reversed the decision. So this is what you heard. A 22-year-old man, right, who at the time when he was 18 years old had downloaded all kinds of graphic child pornography on his phone, child rape, and other horrific sexual images of children, pornography, child pornography. All of this was found on his phone, right? When it was discovered, at first he pled guilty. He was convicted of illegally possessing child porn, and subsequently he was slated to receive the appropriate sentence. But then his lawyer decided that he was going to play this LGBTQP card to get him out of jail, to get him out of being punished for his crime of having all of this graphic child pornography on his phone that he admitted to downloading, that he pled guilty to. Button then tried to argue that he only downloaded child porn out of curiosity, and at a time when he was struggling with issues concerning his transgender identity and sexual identity. In other words, it's everyone else's fault that Button chose to download child porn because they didn't openly accept and applaud Button for suffering from gender dysphoria. So because you have this mental disorder, gender dysphoria, it's okay for you to then go and download a whole lot of graphic child porn with scenes of children being raped and stuff like that. Because you suffering from a mental disorder, it's okay for you to do that. It's okay for you to say, well, I did it because I was suffering from low self-esteem, and I did it because I was having sexual identity issues, and I was having gender identity issues and all that at the age of 18. We're not talking about somebody that was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, 18 years old. For more related news about how mass perversion and sexual deviancy are being mainstreamed by the LGBTQ mafia in the name of tolerance and acceptance, be sure to check out gender.news. It is now seen as unfair to punish LGBTQPs for their crimes against children because LGBTQPs are always victims. Now, this is just what the headline is saying. I'm just reading from the article. While Justice Brian Devereaux, the presiding judge in the case, did admit that none of Bolton's testimony really excuses obtaining child exploitation material with children as young as 5, he still decided to let Button off the hook with a paltry sentence of 2 years probation, along with mandatory treatment. Button has also been ordered to register as a sex offender. Amazingly, an appeals court decided that even that sentence was inappropriate and disproportionate to the real risk Button presents by his offending. In other words, it was just too unfair for Button to have to suffer any consequences because, after all, he is just a poor transgender suffering from constant transphobia throughout society. In my respective view, the applicant's circumstances are unusual, stated Justice Philip Morrison, the appeals court judge who came to Button's rescue. Morrison further lamented that if Button was actually required to register as a sex offender, like Justice Devereaux had ruled, it could negatively interfere with Button's transition into a woman. What this all suggests, of course, is that LGBTQ are now exempt from being held accountable for their crimes because any type of punishment might interfere with their delicate feelings. Never mind the fact that in this case, an adult man with gender dysphoria had photographs of boys as young as 5 posing nude and engaging in oral and anal sex with adults on his phone. Because Button is a precious LGBTQP, he now gets special treatment under the law to continue engaging in all sorts of sexual deviancy unimpeded. What has this world come to? Asks one big league politics commentator in response to this horrific ruling. This should be a problem for anyone at any time to have on their phone. That is pedophilia. And that person should have the rest of their conversations and sexual examined and checked and should be restricted in their profession and labeled as a sex offender. So the only part of his original sentence that still stood was the 2 years of probation and mandatory treatment. And many will tell you that the mandatory treatment don't work. And the judge said that it would be inappropriate to label him as a sex offender and have him register as a sex offender because it could negatively interfere with his transition into a woman. So it's okay for you to participate in acts of pedophilia. That's okay. As long as you're a transgender. Now, if he was a straight out man, you understand what I'm saying, and wasn't claiming this transgender bullshit, then hopefully he would have gotten a much harsher sentence. But because he claimed this transgender bullshit, he just pretty much got off with a slap on the wrist. So go on out there, transition into a woman if you want to, if that's what you want to call it, because you'll never be a woman, but if that's what you want to call it, and you can continue to download child pornography, you can continue to participate in sexual deviancy, you can continue to participate in acts that are pedophilic or whatever you want to call them in nature. You can continue to do all of that because we just don't want to interfere with your transition into womanhood. That's what a judge said. That's what an appellate court judge said. So where's the protection for the children? So what if 2-3 years down the road, after he has so-called transitioned, his urge and his desire to still see children, young boys, engaging in sexual activity with adults escalates or moves into the next phase, and he decides that he wants to act out on some of what he's seeing as far as this porn is concerned, as far as this child pornography is concerned, as far as these sexual fantasies that he's having, he decides that now it's time for him to act out on. And he starts raping children. Because that's where that's headed. An appeals court judge, an appellate court judge just gave him the green light to do that. Just gave him the green light to rape children. To be an active, participating pedophile. That's what the judge just gave him the green light to do. But there's no, but to listen to these people tell it, there's no agenda that's being pushed. And understand something. I want y'all to pay attention. I want y'all to get this. It's no longer about just gay rights. It's no longer about the gays and the lesbians. Now it's all about transgender. See, it's no longer about gay and lesbian, because a gay man is still a man, and he'll let you know, I'm a man. I'm a gay man. I like other men, but I'm a man. You understand what I'm saying? It's no longer about just being a lesbian, a woman who likes other women. I've seen some beautiful lesbians keep their hair done, their nails done, their makeup, dressed like a woman, just as feminine as they can be. But now it's about transgender, that whole completely confusing aspect of you being born one thing, but thinking that you can somehow transition into something else. Thinking that somehow you can change nature. So it's no longer just about gay and lesbian and bisexual. Now it's all about transgender. Now everything, every argument, every conversation centers around transgender. Centers around them trying to actually transform and actually become something else. I'm telling you, the gay rights movement has been hijacked. And this is the agenda. Children. Children have always been the agenda. Children have always been the target. Like I said, there was a time in ancient history, there was a time in history that maybe wasn't so ancient when it was okay. It was legal. Everybody was doing it. But then as the civil as society became more civilized, people started frowning on it. And it became a crime. And the dominant society has always been a part of it. The Europeans have always been into it. That's where it came from. It came from Europe. Them ancient Romans and them ancient Greeks. Told you the name of it was pederasty. And ever since it became illegal, ever since it became something that was frowned on by society, they have had this agenda to get it back to where it's legal. To get it back to where society sees it as something that's normal, as something that's okay. To get it back to where society accepts it. But in order to do that, they had to do it in stages. They had to do it in phases. Phase one was to get us to accept sex outside of marriage. That was the first phase. To get us to accept sex outside of marriage, premarital sex. Phase two was to get us to accept women having children out of marriage. Babies born out of wedlock. That was step two. Then step three was to get us to take God out of schools. To take any mention of God out of schools. Step four was to get us to take any mention of God out of government. State, local governments, any kind of plaques or anything like that, anything in any governmental building or whatever that said anything about God had to go. Step four was to get us to accept homosexuality, gay men and gay women, gay men and lesbians, to get us to accept that. Well, no, I'll say step five was to get us to accept sexual promiscuity. You know, that's what the late 60s and the 70s was all about. That's what that whole hippie and Woodstock era was all about. All of this sexual freedom. What did they call it? The sexual revolution, where everybody was just having sex with everybody and everybody was just so free with sex and all of that. That was step five. That so-called sexual revolution, where everybody just, let go of all their inhibitions and just threw off all the restraints and all of that as far as sex was concerned and just started coming all out with it. Step six was to get us to accept all of this porn. All these porn sites and all of this kind of stuff. So now, it's nothing for folks to just be looking at porn and all of that. As long as it's not children porn, it's okay. Then step 7 was to get us to accept alternative lifestyles. The gay lifestyle, the lesbian lifestyle, the bisexual lifestyle. 8 was this transgender mess, to get folks to accepting that it's okay for folks to think, well, you know, I might have been born a man, but I'm really a woman. Or I might have been born a woman, but I identify as a man. See, that's step 8. Step 9 is to make it normal and to make it acceptable for adults to have sexual relationships with children. That's the final step. And when you got a judge that'll sit on a bench and say that it's okay for a full-grown man, an adult man, because he was 18 years old, he's considered an adult by the law, for an adult man to have graphic child pornography on his phone that he downloaded, that he admitted that he downloaded, that he pled guilty to downloading. Child porn that shows children, little boys as young as 5 years old, having all kinds of sex with adults. When a judge says, okay, that's okay, we're going to let you off on that, we're going to look over that because you transitioning into a woman. You're becoming something else. So see, y'all, if we accept Billy Porter prancing around in his dress on Sesame Street, if we support and don't say anything about all of these new transgender children books that are coming out, all of these transgender LGBTQ cartoons that are coming out for our children to see. See, if we don't say anything, if we support that stuff, then what we're showing them is it's becoming normal for us. It's becoming acceptable for us, for children to be sexualized like this, for children to be confronted with adult sexual situations that they're nowhere near mentally, emotionally, psychologically mature enough or ready to handle. We got grown folks that ain't ready to handle it. You know, children aren't. So I wonder what that judge gonna say or what that judge gonna do when, like I said, 2-3 years down the road, this button dude actually physically carries out and fulfills his fantasy of himself having sex with some 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old little boy. And he becomes an actual offender. Let's take it a little bit further. Yeah, I got another one. I got another story, real similar to the one I just read. This came out of Yahoo News. January the 30th, 2020. Metered McArdle, National Review. Male Iowa sex felon to be released after gender transition. Let me read that to you again. Male Iowa sex felon. He's a felon. Convicted on sex charges. To be released after gender transition. So here's another man that's claiming gender transition to get out of jail. The Iowa Attorney General's office is releasing a man convicted of multiple sex crimes rather than committing him to a mental institution indefinitely as recommended by the state's expert, because the man has undergone hormone therapy as part of a gender transition process. So now taxpayers, whether they want to or not, are being forced to pay for these people to go through all of this transitioning while they're in prison. Well, they in prison, you know they ain't paying for it. The prison ain't paying for it. And if the prison is paying for it, if it's a state prison, where does the prison get its money from? The taxpayers. So now we have to pay for these people's transitions. We have to pay for their surgeries and all the hormone therapy and all the psychological stuff that they have to go through and all of that. Taxpayers have to pay for that, whether we want to or not. Former Midwest Christian Services student Joseph Matthew Smith, 23, was convicted of molesting a fellow student in 2014 and is accused of molesting as many as 15 victims from ages 1 to 13, including the repeated molestation of a 7-year-old. 1. Now, if you think I'm lying, the article will be in the description box. The link will be you can read it for yourself. As many as 15 victims from ages 1 to 13, including the repeated molestation of a 7-year-old. Smith allegedly was molested repeatedly as a child around age 7 as well. Okay, so what you're telling us is you got this 23-year-old man who has been convicted of molesting as many as 15 children from the ages of 1 to 13, who allegedly was repeatedly molested when he was a child around the age of 7. So, okay, so we already know he got some mental stuff going on. And now he's talking about he transgender. He transitioning over to be a woman. Okay, so we know we know. Okay, so we know we already dealing with one mental disorder, and they call it gender dysphoria. So that's one mental issue we already know he got. Okay, well, he got to have mental issues if he was repeatedly molested as a child around the age of 7. But instead of you following the recommendation of the state expert and putting this man in a mental institution, you understand what I'm saying? So he can get some kind of help. You talking about letting him go? You talking about releasing him? You talking about letting a victim who has now become an abuser, just letting him walk back out there simply because he's talking about he gonna transition? Smith was sentenced to prison in 2015 and expressed a desire to begin the gender transition process in 2017. So 2 years after he was sentenced to prison, then all of a sudden he expressed the desire that he wants to transition. 2 years later. Undergoing hormone therapy over the past 2 years at Newton Correctional Facility. The Attorney General's office on January 9 dismissed the application to commit Smith, who now goes by the name Josie, and was transferred this month to the Sioux City Residential Treatment Facility in anticipation of an eventual release. An offender's hormone levels are an important part of substantiating an offender's likelihood of recidivism. You know what I say. Returning to prison. I ain't never been able to pronounce that word. A spokesman for the Attorney General said, "We don't believe we have evidence sufficient to prove Josie Smith has a significant chance of re-offending. But now remember, this is a man who has molested at least 15 children, repeatedly molesting a 7-year-old, and who claims that he was repeatedly molested when he was around 7. So, but they say they don't believe that they have sufficient evidence to prove that he has a significant chance of reoffending. Have you given him any kind of therapy, any kind of treatment or whatever to help him deal with the trauma of him being molested at the age of 7? Because if you haven't done anything to help him deal with that and to help him work his way out of that, then yeah, he's going to reoffend. Because the core issue is still there. The reason why he's an offender is because he was abused. That's the reason why he's an abuser. Well, it's part of the reason why. Smith will still be registered as a sex offender, which requires that he continue to meet with a probation officer. Josie Smith will be subject to strict sex offender reporting required of those who commit the crime he did. I can't do all that. The spokesman said he'll be subject to supervision for the rest of his life. A preliminary report by our expert on the issue, Dr. Jeffrey Davis, put the chance that Smith would offend again sometime over the next 5 years at over 20%. Mr. Smith has not had an intimate relationship, the report stated. His sexual encounters appear to have primarily involved molestation, including his own molestation by multiple perpetrators, and his victimization of others. The report recommended that Smith be committed indefinitely as a sex offender, but to do so, the state is required to prove Smith had an over 50% chance of reoffending, a burden of proof that was complicated by Smith's now lower testosterone levels. What does testosterone have anything to do with it? Testosterone is not the reason why folks molest children. That's not the reason why folks molest children, because of their testosterone levels. That's not the reason why folks molest children. If that was the case, then why would women be molesters? Women molest children just as much as men do. If testosterone was the cause or part of the cause, no. The reason why most people offend and why most people are predators as far as children is concerned is because if you look back in most of them's past, most of them have been violated, have been abused, were sexually molested, were raped as children. Most present offenders were previous victims. So if nobody has dealt with this man's issues of being raped and molested repeatedly by multiple perpetrators when he was a child, then you haven't dealt with his core issues. And then on top of his core issues, now supposedly he's dealing with gender dysphoria. But they don't see how there's evidence that he's going to reoffend. So here's another one that's using this transgenderism, this transition bullshit to get out of jail, to get out of jail free card. So is that going to be the new thing now? Is that going to be the new thing? Everybody that goes in that goes in prison or goes in court or whatever, especially as far as anything pertaining to child pornography or pedophilia or child sexual abuse or whatever. And so are they all just going to claim, transgenderism now and use that as the way to just walk away from the crimes that they have committed? And then they're just going to be sent right back out there on the street to continue to abuse children? Because how many registered sex offenders have re-offended? How many folks that were registered as sex offenders have gone right back to offending, molesting, raping, sexually assaulting, inappropriate sexual contact and sexual conduct with children? So just registering somebody don't stop a thing. It may slow them down a little bit. But given the opportunity, given the chance, they will reoffend. Especially if they haven't had any kind of treatment, any kind of therapy, any kind of counseling. So they planning on 15 children. Do you understand? 23 years old, 15. The youngest one as young as 1 year old. One. And they're just going to let him walk on out just because he's talking about he want to be a woman. Just because he's talking about he going to transition. So do you understand what I'm saying? Children are not safe. There is no safe haven in the United States for children anymore. Maybe there never has been. And we just didn't know it because we weren't privy to this kind of information. Maybe the age of technology and social media and internet and easy access to all of this information, has made us more privy, and more informed as far as this is concerned. But maybe children have never been safe in the United States. I know black children aren't safe in the United States. Black children have never been safe here. But now no child is safe. But of course, I'm concerned about all children, but especially the children in the foundational Black American community. Why? Because it's these black men that are coming out with all of these dresses on and carrying pocketbooks and spreading this toxic masculinity lie and talking about how homophobic and transphobic the black community is. Why? Because those two children that Shalice Farron has, that she's messing up, they're black children. Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, those children, that little boy is black. So yeah, I'm concerned about all children, but especially mine, in my community. Because the ones in my community are the ones that are being targeted the most. That's the reason why black men are being pushed out to do this. That's the reason why black men are being used as the face of all of this mess, all of this sexual deviancy, all of this sexual confusion, all of this twisted mess. Why? To twist the thinking and the minds and the psychology, especially of young black boys. Because if you can get them when they're young black boys, you ain't got to worry about trying to break them when they become young black men. They already broken. They already pose no threat. Why? Because they all feminized. They all soft. They all running around trying to put on dresses and trying to be seen and trying to put on makeup. and wandering around and running around talking about they done broke a nail. So they are absolutely no good to their community as far as being black warriors, being the defense of the community. I wouldn't be surprised, and I probably do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you do the statistics and do the breakdown, if you wouldn't find out that probably more black children watch Sesame Street than any other group of children. I wouldn't be surprised. As a matter of fact, I'm going to research that and come back to y'all with that information. But I wouldn't be surprised. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead on and look for it. Okay, that's 2015. That might be too far back. Let's see if we can find something a little bit closer. Okay. I'm reading it. Okay. This is an ad in Quartz, and it says economists explain why kids who watch Sesame Street did better in school. This was February the 22nd, 2019. And this is the section that I want to concentrate on. In the 1980s, census cohort, for example, kids who had access to Sesame Street were 1.5 to 2% points more likely to be at the grade level appropriate for their age. The study also found that boys, kids who grew up in poor counties, and black children were particularly impacted by access to Sesame Street. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find another one that gives us some kind of percentage. And this may be the study that they were talking about. It's something I found in the Washington Post. Hold on, hold on. I'm still reading, y'all. Hold on, because I really wanna I really wanna see if I can find this out while I'm still talking to y'all. Okay. Maybe I'm not asking the right question, but I'm gonna see if I can't find out about that. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can't find out the percentages and see if it's possible that as far as the percentages is concerned, that a higher percentage of black children watch Sesame Street than any other group of children. So I really need to, that's sticking in there, and I'm gonna need to find that out. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research on that. The question didn't come up until just now, but it would be very, very interesting to see because there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a specific reason other than just pushing the agenda. There's got to be a specific reason why the powers that be chose Sesame Street, chose to put this flamboyant, over the top, cross dressing drag queen Billy Porter on Sesame Street. Now, yes, it gives him access to probably all children, from children to, children of all ages, especially probably up until about, like I said, the second or third grade, and definitely younger children, um, from all groups, all walks of life. But I'm just wondering if maybe, just maybe, because see, it may just be a little bit harder for white children, Hispanic children, Asian children, Middle Eastern children to identify with this man because he doesn't look like them, and because he doesn't really look like anybody in their community. You understand what I'm saying? But black children can automatically identify with him. Why? Because he's a black man. You understand what I'm saying? And you'll be able to look at him and tell that he's a man, but he's just a man in a dress. And that's what's going to be so confusing for these children. So when they come to you as a parent, or to you as an older sibling, or to you as an uncle or a grandparent or whatever, and they ask you, well, grandma, granddaddy, mama, daddy, whatever, why was this man on Sesame Street? Why did he have his dress on? Why was he dressed like a lady? How do you explain that to your 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old child? Why should you have to explain that? Especially from them seeing it from a place like Sesame Street. Why would you have to explain that to them? Why would you have to answer that type of question? But I'm here to tell you people, there's no safe haven anymore. Once Sesame Street stopped being safe for children, that's it. That was the last stronghold. We already know they're not safe in schools. We've had teachers and principals and coaches and all of this kind of stuff molesting children and having all kind of sexual relationships with them and having babies by them and all of this kind of stuff. That's been going on for years now. We know Hollywood isn't safe for them. The music industry isn't safe for them. School isn't safe for them. Some homes are not safe for them. So there is no safe haven for children in the United States. So like I said, the United States can come down off of that moral high horse and talk about the sex trafficking and the child sex industry and all of that kind of stuff that's going on in these other countries and just accept the fact that we already know it ain't no worse over there than it is here. Not for children. And they have no defenders. They have nobody to defend them. They have nobody to stand up for them. When judges and attorney generals are willing to just cut folks loose who have been convicted of committing crimes against children, and you just gonna cut them loose just because they tell you that they want to try to become something that they can never be. So these children have no safe haven. They have no safe haven. And like I said, black children will automatically identify more with Billy Porter because he's a black man. When they look at him, they see themselves. When they look at him, they see their daddy or quote unquote their mama or whatever. But because of the color of the skin, it's somebody that they can identify with. It's somebody that they can connect with. So that's the reason why I'm really wondering if the percentage of children that watch Sesame Street is higher among foundational Black American children. Or could it possibly be because you heard what I read in the study, and I'll link that article in the description box. You heard what I said, that they said boys and African American children and children from poor counties do better in school and do better educational wise because of access to Sesame Street. So could that be it? Could that be the plan? Let's send this black man on here to throw a monkey wrench in Sesame Street, helping these poor children, these black children, do better in school, helping them get a head start, helping them get a leg up. Sesame Street has been too much of a positive thing in their lives for all these years. Now it's time for us to do something about that. Now it's time for us to introduce something else to them through the vehicle, which is Sesame Street. Makes you wonder, don't it? Makes you wonder what the real plan is, because whatever it is, it's very diabolical. It's very diabolical and it's very well thought out. And because the powers that be are so patient, and because they don't mind waiting years and decades and centuries to see their agenda realized, because they didn't mind executing it phase by phase by phase by phase, instead of trying to force the whole thing out at one time, because they knew that society wouldn't accept that. But let's break it down to society in phases. But the whole plan all the time has been to get society back to that place where society considered it normal and acceptable for adult people, especially adult white men, to have sexual relationships with minor children, especially little boys. That's been the plan all the time. To legalize pedophilia, to legalize pederasty, to get pederasty back into the society as something that's normal, as something that is accepted, as something that's no longer considered criminal. And the two cases that I just read to you pretty much said that even though these two men were convicted of crimes, their crimes weren't criminal enough for one of them to be listed and registered as a sex offender, and for the other one to stay in prison and go to a mental institution indefinitely so he could get the help that he definitely needs. So they are decriminalizing child sexual abuse, child sexual molestation. They are decriminalizing it. Why? Because once you decriminalize it, it makes it a whole lot easier to just make it legal. So if you sit and do nothing, if you sit and say nothing, the least you can do is sign that petition. The least you can do is boycott, raise some hell. You understand what I'm saying? Don't watch Sesame Street no more. Don't watch nothing else on HBO if HBO want to be this low down and dirty. If you got cable TV, tell them to take HBO off of it. Boycott HBO. Boycott AT&T and all of their products. If you got your phone service, your internet service, or whatever through AT&T, cancel it and go and move over to somebody else. But definitely, there needs to be a boycott on Sesame Street. There needs to be a boycott on Sesame Street. There needs to be a boycott on HBO, and there needs to be a boycott on AT&T. I don't have HBO, and I don't fool with AT&T. And I don't have young children in my house to watch Sesame Street. My youngest is 14 years old. She hadn't watched Sesame Street in 8 years, 9 years. I think she was like 5, 6 years old when she started watching Sesame Street. My granddaughter watches Pink Phone. That's all she watches that I know of. When she here, that's all she watches is Pink Phone. But she definitely will not watch Sesame Street here. And I'm going to have a conversation with her mama about her watching Sesame Street anywhere else. See, those images leave an imprint on a child's mind, an impressionable imprint on a child's mind. And if they keep seeing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, it has a mental psychological effect. And they start acting out those things in their real lives. So yes, this is definitely an attempt to indoctrinate children, especially black children, because it's a black man they're using. You don't see no white man going on Sesame Street all decked out like a woman in a dress and all of that. You don't see these white rappers around here with dresses on and carrying pocketbooks and all of that. You don't see no white man walking on the red carpet and all of that, all dressed up with dresses on and all of this flamboyant over-the-top mess that Billy Porter be doing. Buck breaking. The same buck breaking that took place on the plantation, where they would take those black men and they would tie them down and they would forcibly rape them in front of the women and the children and the other slaves to show their dominance, to show that that black man was weak and that he was easily dominated by the white man in an attempt to effeminate him, in an attempt to crush his masculinity, take his power away from him, his power to fight back, his power to be a warrior, his power to protect and defend his woman and his child and his community. This is just modern day buck breaking. And yeah, all children might get a dose of it, but the specific target is black children, especially young black men. So for all you naysayers, and all you folks who want to run around and call people homophobic and transphobic and talk about you spewing hate and all this, and why can't we just love everybody, and why can't we just accept everybody, and because it's obvious. It's obvious to us who want to see the truth and who are willing and ready and able to accept the truth. It's obvious that there's an agenda. It's obvious that the end game is the children, that the end game is to get it back to the place where society doesn't find anything wrong with adults, especially white males, having sexual relationships with minor underage children, especially little boys. It's crystal clear to anybody with eyes in their sockets and a brain in their head that that's what the agenda is. It's crystal clear that the gay rights movement has been hijacked. And it was all done through the gay rights movement trying to attach itself and trying to identify with the struggles of Black African, foundational Black Americans. So they finally found their way in to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and all of those protections, all of those special rights and those special privileges and those special protections that were meant to be just for us. They are all now being used by the powers that be through LGBTQP, whatever they want to call it. It's all being used through that to normalize and eventually legalize pederasty, pedophilia. And I will link the definition of pederasty in the description box. It's crystal clear. That's all the gay rights movement was ever about. That's the only reason why it was ever started. It wasn't ever started because anybody was ever really concerned about the rights of people to have sex with whoever they wanted to have sex with. Grown, consenting adults. The LGBTQ, TPK, whatever community now is not about really being concerned about gay folks and lesbians and transgenders and all. It's not about love and acceptance and you concerned because these people suffering from this mental disorder and they committing suicide and all of that. No, that's not what it's really all about. That's the front. But its main aim, its goal, its agenda has always been to get back to the children. to get back to where it was open season on children. You can just walk and pick you any child that you want. And their parents won't be able to do a thing about it. Why? Because you'll be protected. You'll have special protections. All you have to do is just say that you're transgender. And that gives you special protections. Until they finally just come on around and just go ahead on and legalize it. And like I said, it won't be a thing that the parents can do. And I'm going to say this one thing before I leave. At this point, anybody, especially any foundational Black American, who is even at this point remotely considering voting for anybody, let's vote any Democrat. You might as well go on and jump off a bridge somewhere or swallow some pills you might as well go and do away with yourself now. Because that's all you're doing is committing suicide. If you vote for anybody, especially a Democrat. Because Democrats are all behind this. Democrats are pushing this. Democrats are all about the LGBTQP issues. And special rights and special privileges and special protections for the LGBTQ community. Look how many Democrats have been implicated and accused of somehow or another being involved with some kind of pedophile ring or some kind of child sex trafficking. The Clintons with Pizzagate. The Clintons' name was connected to Harvey Weinstein. Okay, well, we already know that Donald Trump was connected with Harvey Weinstein. Donald Trump was actually accused of raping a woman when she was 13 years old with Epstein. But the Republicans right now just aren't pushing all this LGBTQ stuff. That's the Democrats that are pushing all of that. When you see these Democrats, especially these Black Democrats and members of the Congressional Black Caucus, when you see them out demonstrating or you see them out, protesting anything, it's either something that has to do with LGBTQ or something that has to do with immigration. You'll never see them out doing all of that with any Black issues, with any issues that impact the foundational Black American community. So you offering up your children as sacrifices if you vote for any Democrat. Because they all down with this agenda. Most of Hollywood identifies as Democrats. And we know all the sick, twisted stuff that goes on in Hollywood, not just among the adults, but with the kids as well. So I just wanted to bring y'all this, I'm not going to say I didn't mean to stay this long because I knew it was going to take this much to get through this information. But again, all of these articles will be linked in the description box. You can go, you can read them for yourself. You can do your own Google searches and come up with other information and come up with other facts and data and all of this kind of stuff, but we got to do something. And please, I'm begging you, sign this petition. Sign this petition. Boycott HBO. Boycott Sesame Street. Boycott AT&T. Because the only way the only way we're going to get their attention and the only way they're going to realize that we're real is if we got to start affecting their bottom line. We have got to start affecting their bottom line. It's not enough for us to just do all this talking. We have got to start affecting their bottom line. We have got to start impacting their pockets. See, if we don't vote for the Dems and they don't get in that White House this year, and they don't get those Senate seats again in 2020, I mean in 2022, then that's going to affect their bottom line. That's going to affect their pockets. See, that's the only way to get these folks' attention and to let these folks know that we mean business is you have got to affect their bottom line, because that's all that matters to them is their bottom line. They have no morals. They have no character. They don't really care about their own, less more anybody else. They just stay on code with each other because that's how they keep their system going. Their system of white supremacy, their system of white privilege. That's how they keep it going, by staying on code. But it's not because they're just so in love with each other. They're just in love with what the system affords them. So we're not going to affect them by dealing with them morally, because they have no morals. They have no ethics. Anything goes with most of them. That's the reason why all this forgiveness stuff and all of these shows of weakness and forgiveness and all this kumbaya and everybody want to unite and all that. That's the reason why none of that does any good. Because these people do not attach themselves emotionally to anything. It's all about the bottom line. It's all about winning. It's all about money. It's all about dominance. It's all about control. It's all about power. So you don't impact them until you impact their control, until you impact their power, until you impact their dominance. And how do you do that? By impacting their money, by impacting their bottom line. And all I can say is this: if your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your little sisters, your little brothers, your cousins, you understand what I'm saying? If they're not worth you boycotting HBO and you not having HBO for a while, if they're not worth you switching from AT&T to some other service, if they're not worth you cutting the TV off so that nobody watches Sesame Street or anything else that HBO is producing or anything else that AT&T has to do with, then what you're telling them is, yeah, I'm willing to serve you up as a sacrifice so I can have what I want right now. See, that's the reason why we're in the shape we're in now. Because when some of those civil rights leaders had the opportunity to do something different, they chose to offer us up as a sacrifice so that they could have what they wanted right then, so that they could have that sexual access, and so that they could have that so-called access to white society and the dominant society right then. They weren't concerned about what was going to happen to us. Martin Luther King was the only one that rethought that thing and realized that he had led us down the wrong road. And he was repenting about that thing. To repent simply means to have a change of heart, a change of mind, and then change your actual direction. And he had changed his actual direction. His mission, his purpose, everything had changed. And he let that be known. And that's the reason why they killed him. But he was the only one that changed. He was the only one that not only admitted, that not only that realized that their integration was the wrong thing and the wrong way to go, and that it had got us in a place where we really didn't need to be, that we were better off where we were than to be in integration. He wasn't the only one that recognized that, but he was the only one that was willing to admit it and do something about it. So let us not be like those who went before us and sold us out. Let us not sell our children out. Let us not put our children on the table of sacrifice just so we can be appeased right now. Let's not sell our children into sexual slavery. Like some of our ancient ancestors sold us into slavery. Let us not be the ones to sell our children into sexual slavery by not doing something about this. So the very least that you can do is sign this petition and share it and pass it on and get as many other people to sign it as you possibly can. And boycott. Just like we need to boycott Daniel Kaluuya. We need to boycott HBO. We need to boycott Sesame Street. And we need to boycott AT&T for them even being involved in anything like this. Because it had to come down from the top. This ain't something that the folks at Sesame Street decided to do. Understand that. This is not something that they decided to do. This was something that was decided for them by the head folks in charge. Just like I said, yeah, Billy Porter might be the black face of this. He may be the one that they putting out there to push it and promote it, but it's not his agenda. He's not operating on his own orders. He's getting orders from the top. Boycott him too. All you folks that's sitting up watching FX and watching this poise or whatever it is that he plays in or whatever, all you folks watching that, boycott that too. And anything else that you see him in, or any other project that you see him involved with, boycott it. The only way to get these people's attention is to affect their bottom line. It's just that simple. Find something else to watch. I don't care how much you might call yourself liking this series that's on FX that he's supposed to be a part of. I don't care how much you might like it. Find something else to watch. For the sake of the children, find somebody else to watch. But again, like I said, all of these links will be in the description box. The link to the PayPal for the channel is in the description box. If you just decide to support the channel that way, please go. Please read this stuff. Please sign the petition. Please do some of your own research. You understand what I'm saying? And please just take the blinders off. Take the blinders off and just accept it for what it really is. The children are the end game of this agenda. I don't know how much more they have to do for us to accept that. I don't know how much more they have to do for us to say, okay, enough is enough. You cannot have the children. I mean, and they're no longer hiding it. They're not hiding it. This is not covert anymore. This is not undercover. They doing this all bold in everybody's face. When they send somebody like Billy Porter to show up on Sesame Street, it can't get no more in your face than that. And if you're not willing to do your part now, to put an end to this, to stop this, to push back against this, to fight this, then 10, 15 years down the road, when all of our children are just open game, You know what I'm saying? And these predators running around hunting them like prey, out in the wilderness, ain't nothing you can say. Ain't nothing you can say. They presenting the challenge. They saying, here it is. This is what we doing. What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do to stop it? How you think you gonna stop us? This is what we gonna do. This is what we doing. And if you sit back in your fear and in your complacency and just let it happen and don't do anything, like I said, the least you can do is sign a petition. That's the least you can do. The least you can do is sign a petition and boycott. I think all foundational Black Americans need to boycott the Super Bowl. I think all Black foundational Black Americans just need to boycott that. But please like this video. Please share this video. Please have this conversation. Have this conversation in your personal life, with your family, with your friends, with people that you know, with people in your neighborhood, in your churches, in your organizations. Please have this conversation. Have this conversation and just do your part. If it's nothing else other than signing this petition and sharing the petition and boycotting Sesame Street, HBO, and AT&T. Like I said, all the links will be available in the description box. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that bell notification so that you can be notified when we upload videos. Y'all take the blinders off and let's say enough is enough and understand that it's no longer about us. It's no longer about us. It's about the children. It's always been about the children. Like I said, maybe we didn't know it, but they're making it clear now. They're making it crystal clear now that it's about the children. What are we going to do? Y'all have a good night.